In the meantime, we've got a few more headlines today, especially today, Pokemon Day, an official holiday by Nintendo and Game Freak. They decided to announce some game updates, which we're going to run through, and one specifically that impacts the Pokemon card game. We do have Pokemon Invitational International at London happening in April, so this will likely impact that. So brought to us by Polygon, we can see they have a whole presentation video today from Pokemon. They announced Pokemon Legends, another game, another bold take on games with Pokemon rather than just the same side-scrolling kind of thing. But the big one is this Pokemon Trading Card Game Pocket. It's a bit of a mouthful, but more or less, they're debuting another app for your phone from mobile where you can trade and buy Pokemon cards digitally with each other. The Pokemon game, trading card game, has always been great when it comes to getting new cards and being able to build decks and sharing that with friends by trading, etc. So they've always been great about community, but the last iteration kind of suffered from a development issue with it where they didn't really have the ability to. It was more about loot boxing. Now, looks like they're adding this app. Maybe it's a cash grab. Maybe, we have to see what happens with it, how they design it and everything. But like I said, they're generally pretty good guy, honest about these things. Off your initial, you're the card guy here, Nick. Off your initial bat, did you see the news today? Have you any sort of like initial thoughts with it?
So no, my initial thoughts just hearing it right now. I haven't heard anything about it today because I've been pretty busy today. But when it comes to like Pokemon in general, the cards aren't that expensive. Like you can play a tier 1 deck, $100 out of the gate, 150 maybe in whatever meta it was. During the Charizard meta when Charizard was super huge like 3 months ago, you could have got I built one for $37. Like it was a tier 1 deck, and I was going around stomping people.
We're not talking about first edition foil Charizards from 1999, right? That like would sell for $1,000 or 10 grand.
No, this was just like the new version of a Charizard in the new pack, whatever it might be. This happens all the time. You get new versions of the card and stuff like that.
Yeah.
New ways to play. But the thing about Pokemon is like something that you have to really know would be that digital. It might not make sense in general, and they might not be able to make money off of it because of how cheap a lot of these cards are, just physically. Like so cards that are really, really great because it's just we'll call it the ugly version, right? The version A, where version C is the one that everybody wants. It's the borderless, shiny, really awesome art, which they're able to do. Those ones are worth hundreds of bucks sometimes, but the cheaper ones are $7, like stuff like that. So I'm not sure how much money they'd be able to make off of like trying to cash in digitally. Especially with like the way the old card game used to work. The old card game was very trade intensive and stuff like that. So
but that might be the point here, right? They already have a huge collector base for the physical cards. We know about shiny hunters. That Pokemon is a whole special breed of people that really do love shiny hunting, really do like the collectible aspect of it, even the mainstream games, the mainline games. So this might be not so much a digital push to double dip on money because, that's another thing. Just realizing when you buy a pack of Pokemon cards, they usually give you a code where you get those cards then digitally. So spending the $5 on a pack, you get the physical card as well as the digital card. So it's not really like, I don't think it's going to be a money chase on this one. It might be a competitive chase. Like they're just building a competitive scene, allowing the entry for anybody to get into it to be a lot easier, a lot simpler. So, and that's kind of like the vibe you get from Pokemon, especially with internationals coming up in April. It's a big time to market. Anybody can play. Anybody could jump in. I know $150 sounds pretty big for kids or for teenagers, but $150 is reasonable because we're going to talk about in a second MTG Magic the Gathering decks and whatnot. But Nick, what are some of the price points for entry on those cards, just to compare and contrast?
Usually usually standard in Magic is supposed to be about $200, but that has not been the case. It's like usually like $500. Like Magic suffers from old time formats. So like old time formats are extremely popular still. So the only way to get new cards into these metas, into these older metas, is to print more busted cards, like more power creep comes into the game, and that leads to like these pretty expensive cards in standard. And like one of the more recent ones is like a mythic rare that's worth $100. It's called Shieldred. It's a really good card, solid card. It doesn't even see that much play compared to like another card, but it's like $100. Like,
yeah, and like I know in the past, the Wizards, especially the last year, Wizard of the Coast has had some criticisms about how much they're kind of tapping that player base for money, how quick they're releasing cards, how they're releasing promotional sets. They had a My Little Pony promotional set, which apparently was busted. It's kind of a fun thing to do, but like some of the cards were ridiculous. Has there been any other sets like that? Like I believe
the more recent set that like really changed the way the whole format went, the whole meta, was the Lord of the Rings set. Like the first Lord of the Rings set introduced a lot of like really, really interesting cards. And one of them just ended up being Orcish Bowmasters. Is like I played Legacy, and it's the second most played card in the format.
Really? And isn't Legacy like any card ever?
Yeah, except for like the restricted list. There's a ban list and everything like that, but essentially like my deck could be $2,000 to $6,000, right? And then right. This card is now $40. It's the second most played card in the format. So, and that came out. Crazy. It's not a standard card though. That's the only difference, is that they release like these weird sets.
That's really crazy because like Magic's it's 30 years old, isn't it? And like they just had an anniversary. So like literally the second most played card is a card that just came out within the last year, and it's competing with all these cards for the last 30 years. That's really interesting to me, really compelling. But let's move back into the Pokemon stuff, specifically, obviously, with the app that's coming out. I want to read a little bit more about it. Now we got our opening remarks. In Pokemon trading card game Pocket, players will be able to enjoy the thrill of opening booster packs and collecting cards, showcasing special visual effects. So that sounds like there might be a digital component of like animations to the shinies or to special.
It sounds like Yu-Gi-Oh! It sounds like the Yu-Gi-Oh! Version of Magic. I'm not even joking. Like this is going to be a tool disc.
Right. Do you think this also means like an AR or a VR situation?
I mean, like it could, but that's never the way you should go with your card game. It's that route. But
why is that?
It's just not what people want to play.
I know,
I'm not playing a card game to play like a virtual reality game. And like you could play a virtual reality game that has like a card game in it, but that's
where the AR part of it might be really cool, because it'll take the card, it'll see what it is, and then for a viewer watching the competition, it might spark some, especially because the Pokemon is very animated, it's very cartoony, it's had the anime and the cartoon forever. It's the mainline games. You've seen the Pokemon sit there and go, fire breath.
I mean, personally, I think if that's the case, I think that they need to do a little survey and see how many people turn off animations. Because I'm one of those.
It might be a competitive edge thing, because competitors competing. I'm going to say competitors competing a bunch, because that's a tongue tire. But competitors competing, they might want lower settings to boost their performance. But I don't know, like words and phrases in the PRs, like immersive cards, might be leading to, they're looking for that digital collectible animation, that cool factor, as well as that whole playing an entry level, bringing people in.
I would assume that this is more to pull in the Pokemon Go fan base, because a good majority of the Pokemon Go fan base that's left over are not incorporated in the rest of the franchise for the most part. Like they might have a game, but they are not incorporated in the like they are Pokemon fans, not Pokemon fanboys, right? Like it's a much different sort of approach to the game. But like
also with that, Pokemon Go has taken a hit a little bit of a dip as far as population playing it, but it's still huge. It's still global. There's still a huge competition scene, and there's still a huge player base in general. But noticing right now, if continuing reading, skipping ahead to this, it's players will be able to open 2 booster packs every day at no cost, which feels great as a competitive player. Kind of just like you get no worries, kind of freebie chase twice a day.
That's pretty. It's crazy. It sounds crazy, but a Pokemon like if you didn't know, Pokemon, their digital version of the game has always been very, very nice to the player base. Even before the most recent update and everything like that. Before when it was like the actual app and everything like that, it was awesome to play. It was a much better than like Hearthstone. You name it. Gwent. Like it doesn't really matter. Like it always preferred to just keep you on the app playing and giving you stuff rather than you going to find like another game.
Well, yeah, and like in that way too, Pokemon and Nintendo and Game Freak all like to focus on the demographic. That's why like Smash Bros has had a hard time competing, even though it's a very competitive game. Nintendo always kind of wanted to pull it back into a party game. So it's cool to see these changes. It's cool to see these mindsets where they're still keeping the door open for anybody, and they're allowing these low floor skill caps or entry so that people can jump in, keeping costs low so that it's a lot of fun. And that's really what competition is to be about, because who knows who the next champion is going to be, which is a very big Pokemon mantra, right? I want to be the very best.
Yeah. And I mean, like one cool thing about Pokemon tournaments, if you ever go to one, they like most of the time on weekends, it'll be on like a Sunday at one LGS, like a local game shop. And it will be like parents bringing like who play Pokemon, who bring their kid, and those kids love playing Pokemon because they've been like, brought in with their parents and stuff like that. Right. So they enjoy it as like a thing to do with their parents. Again, this is another way to get parents and kids like involved together playing the same Pokemon game. The card.
Right. So. Right. So this app, the Pokemon Trading Card Game Pocket, is set to arrive in 2024. So we've still got a bit of time probably, and it'd probably be another Zoom TM kind of thing. They do have a couple other announcements, but it's only important, I think, to the international, where they might be changing some of the meta moves, might patch noting some of the lineups and stuff. But really, that's all we need to really figure out, right? There's no competitive Pokemon Cafe yet, but we'll see. We'll see. To your point, like Pokemon has been such a nostalgia thing for kids, because it's also been such a nostalgia thing for adults, like people our age, I guess, have been playing it for such a long time, and now their kids are jumping on board with that. So it is cool to see Pokemon making that entry easy enough for the kids, for people, bringing people's skill levels up. Because they're able to get the cards, like, right? They don't have to buy a $2,000 Black Lotus, $8,000 Black Lotus. No. Sometimes
just like the retail products that Pokemon sells are legitimate. Like they'll just have a card that you'll need for a competitive. Like instead of just like buying packs, it'll literally go like, here's 3 cards of the card that you need and 5 packs. It'll cost you $20, and like you can just get those, and it'll be like a special promo version of that card. Yeah, and granted, that's not the one everybody wants. Everybody wants that cool, nice, beautiful Charizard flying in the sun, with the clouds and everything. But like, a lot of people would just go, "I'll just spend $20 so I can go play."
Yeah, that's the vibe here. They've got the collectors already in the bag. Now they're going to move into the competitor space, and it's cool to see that them allowing that, making that happen.